Hi guys, welcome to another video tutorial. I am going to attempt the Silvermoon Hall in Genshin Impact in Nod Krai, I think. I'm sorry about the way I just said that. Anyways, I took some screenshots from the game, from someone else's game, because I haven't actually been there yet. And I sort of, added these three here as my reference because I think they were the most beautiful. I'm not entirely sure about wide angle from the top, from the front. I think we're just gonna have to see what happens. So anyways, I added these three images as a reference, and I also have that down in the link below. This is the A4 canvas in Procreate, so if you don't know what canvas to use, that's a great one because of its settings, and more info down below. Anyways, let's jump right in. I'm gonna use a mixture of Procreate brushes of my own this time. I think I'm just gonna start with the grainy detail brush for sketching. I just feel really comfortable with that, but honestly anything works. For example, the studio pen is a wonderful alternative. And with any dark color, we can go ahead and just basically start sketching in our motive. So for me, the main focal point is gonna be this structure. I'm really glad I added several references in here because it helps me see the actual shape a little bit. I'm just going to add the very rough bit here for this pearl type structure. I will probably go for a mixture of all three references, basically having this one sit in the distance here. Well, we don't have to do any of that really, I'm just going to make it a bit bigger, but basically I want to add the flowers here. There are like rocks on the side. I'm just going to add one of those in, perhaps just one like that. And really, actually, we could add both in and that'd be quite nice. So I'm going to add these two rocks in from the edge there. They've got a bit of a moon in there as well. And I'm going to go ahead and erase things with the defined coloring brush, but the syrup is always the alternative, I say, for that, and I would recommend for that. And yeah, that is plenty good. Okay, so we have those, and I'm gonna have some flowers in front of them and coming out over here. And there's another moon on the right side there. I'm just gonna add that sort of around here. And there is a bit of a path between these flowers. And then we've got, I think, some water coming in here. So that will be a really nice area for reflection. And the rest of this area in the front, I'm going to be adding the wonderful flowers in here. There is a bit of a cave wall, I think, on the side, but I don't think I will add that. I feel like that will just limit the painting a little bit. And then we've got these beautiful trailing plants, vines, so I'm going to add those in naturally. Hanging in from the side. I'm going to think about the actual size of this later. I think I'll just make one of those smaller, but it's not that important at the moment. And I'll add in some over here. In this reference, we can actually see the background a bit. And it looks like the cave walls all around are also in the shape of sort of waves. Which is quite interesting. So the cave wall behind that will go up here. And I will also sort of add the cave wall in the background to go up here a little bit, even if that might not be quite the right position. So just in that general direction up here and here. Okay, so that's all I want to do for the sketch really. This is pretty rough, isn't it? But let's go ahead into the actual colors and we can start tidying things up. I generally don't do any outlines. I think they are a waste of time. In my case, I don't, you know, in my art style, I don't need that. But if you want to refine your sketch, go ahead. Anyways, with the hard shading brush in my case, and as an alternative, the hard airbrush, I would recommend going in with the background colors first. So generally speaking, we've got quite a dark blue in the background. I will give you these colors that I use down below as well. I'm just going to start with this here, very basic, very broad. It's quite dark, isn't it? And to make sure we see our sketch, go ahead onto your sketch layer and set that onto divide. I will lower the opacity so we don't have that glaring at us too much, and on the layer with the background I will go ahead and add my first bit of lighter blue just behind this structure here in the center of the focus. There is like this sort of mist coming up. All of the front, especially with the flowers, I think the flowers themselves glow, so they really light up the area. I'm gonna go for a bit more of a cooler tone up there as my base. This is for the flowers mainly, this color, and then I will grab a slightly darker hue again and go slightly darker in this case too and add that as my path. And then we've got this darker area here where everything sort of trails off into the darkness and there's a bit of water. I will go a bit darker here again. Okay, let's start to make something proper out of this. We've got this big structure as well. I'm going to add that on a new layer and I'm going to be using the defined coloring brush, but the syrup brush is wonderful as an alternative, so go ahead and grab that if you don't have my brushes. And let us start with this sort of medium blue tone. I'm gonna go quite light, I think, and the reason we're putting this on a separate layer as well is because we can use a wonderful clipping layer mask to help us shade this shape in. So we've sort of got one thicker area and then it curls around itself. Because the defined coloring brush that I'm using has got slightly different properties to the syrup brush, if you are using my brush, then we will go ahead and duplicate this layer and merge those two together. But if you're using the syrup brush, you really don't need to bother. The syrup has 100% opacity. Anyways, I think this is a pretty good shape, so let's go ahead and duplicate that to make sure everything is nice and thick. And we've got the rounder part inside, which I will add below that on a new layer. And I'll also might as well just go ahead and add a lighter blue in here. Oh, and a quick trick for that is if you tap the lasso tool and you select ellipse, you can just go in and create a circle. Try and make sure to make an even circle and not an oval, and then just pull in the color, and then you can move this anywhere, which gives us a really easy round shape. And depending from where you look, these don't actually meet, but I will set it here. And also I will go into the main layer where we've had the outside, and with the lasso tool and the ellipse I might just go ahead and basically take away, basically make a round a round shape, so it sort of catches the edge of this, and then it will already give us a bit of a template for, whoops, a rounder sort of inside. Yeah, I don't actually know if this is particularly helpful, but anyways, I'm just going to take that away. I'm going to add that color in and basically just try and make that a little bit rounder. And then over here we've got that tip that I've just accidentally taken away. Anyways, I'll just make sure that is nice and thick again. And we have, I think, a third part that is holding this in place, the moon, which I'll also add on a new layer between these guys in darker, just so we can see the difference coming up on the side, and just adding that to the edge here. We probably want to add that behind the actual moon as well, so we're not painting over the moon. Okay, and I will go ahead and refine this edge a little bit. Okay, that is a start. I think let us go ahead and I'm just going to erase the edge here actually, but on the main part here. But then I think it will be time to add these side structures that I've added into the painting on a new layer on the top, and I will go with the background blue and just go slightly lighter. Slightly lighter and more purple, I think, and a bit more gray. Let's go gray over here, and that will give us the first rock color. One of these is actually a little bit shorter than the other one, so I'm going to make the right side here shorter than the sketch is, and there's a moon in here too, and another bit of rock. I'm going to paint the rocks on one layer, and then the moon I'll add onto the layer with the other moon, so we've got the moons on one layer. I'll go lighter and more turquoise for this moon. And I don't know if this, I think this is sitting in the background, that other moon, but I don't know if it is in this moon too, or anyways, I will leave it out of it. You can tell me if I made a mistake in the comments. And then on the other side, I just have that other moon over here that I will color pick the flowers around it for, and then use a lighter blue like that for this. Something like that. Okay, I think we can hide the sketch layer now. That is okay for a minute, and we can go ahead and start adding our flowers. So the flowers are quite bright and very turquoise. Whoops. They've got a nice shape to them as well. So let's create a new layer on the top and add them here. So we have got brighter colors than what we've added here. So I'm just going to go brighter first on the same color and then go more towards turquoise. And with the defined coloring brush or the syrup brush, just go ahead and basically add the shapes for the edges and then work your way into the middle. As I see it, these flowers have got, you know, between 3 and 5 petals to them, and they all sort of go in this shape where if I had an outline, we could have something like this, if that makes sense. I need to delete that, take that away. Okay, and now just continue. I mean, there are a bunch of flowers here, so we generally just want to add the big ones individually, and the rest will be more flower noise. Oops. So petals that are a bit wider to the top edges and come a bit closer together in between. trying to angle these flowers as well, so that some of them you can imagine the middle to go that way and others the middle to go that way, or something like that. Now I'm going to start layering them on top of each other more. And as we go towards the back, they will become smaller. In the background here, I have got these sort of facing upward more, like that, so you can't actually see the background petals that much, and you're just adding, whoops, like the front ones that you can immediately see, for example. And we still want to make sure that we leave a lot of space between these guys, because even in this one you can see there are different colors in between, or there's, you know, just a bit of space visible. In the background you can also see the shape of the flowers is very small now, so that is sort of what we're aiming for over there. And especially on the left here, where we also have smaller flowers than in the front, I'm just going to add sort of individual petals type shapes. It's sort of in the direction of where flowers would stick up, but not quite as thought out or detailed where they all belong to a specific flower. And then there's a bit of an entrance here that leads to this moon where the water seems to be coming through, so I will leave some space for that as well and make these flowers come out towards me a little bit more. Also bigger shapes again as we come towards us. In the background there are also flowers over there, for which I will go slightly darker and into a different hue just to make sure that these do look different. I'll go even darker, I think, and just add some in the distance there. There will be less space between these flowers in the distance as everything sort of shrinks together a bit more. And I'll also add this color on the other side edge. And I will also use this darker color, this slightly darker color, just as a base around the edges over here, even though this is already creeping closer where I am adding these colors in now, these petals, but these will serve as a base onto which I will add some lighter flowers as well to really thicken out that part with flowers. And I think that other moon is just sort of sitting in the regular flower bed, I think. There's a bit of space in between as well. Oops, now I'm adding more grassy type shapes. I'll try and keep these petal shapes going a bit more. Naturally, you might be tired of this already, but it will look great, I think, in the end. I will add some of these darker ones on this side as well, also growing smaller as it goes backwards. And then I'll grab that lighter color again and add more in the front here. There's a huge one here that's probably way too big, to be honest. I'm just going to cut into this, separate some of these shapes out, and then I'll make smaller ones out of those. And just add some more petals in between, giving sort of the illusion of more flowers, but keeping that distance between them so it does look like they are separate ones. I feel like I probably should be adding more of this shape into the whole thing, but yeah, I might have to do that later on when we are refining the whole thing. Okay, so I went for a slightly different style with the flowers down here, and I will go into a darker color over on the edges here to sort of fan out the flowers a bit. I feel like some of this might be a little bit too much, so I'm just gonna go in with the eraser and take a little bit out. Honestly, I think one of the main things I sort of missed here is that the flowers aren't actually that close together. You can see the difference here from the top view, and oh, we can see the moon from here actually, which is quite nice. I know that there isn't actually, well, I was just sort of thinking it would be really cool to add a few more moons into the landscape. I can see another one in the back there, and I think there might be, well, definitely 1, 2, or 3 over there. So I think I'll add a couple more moons into the background as well, and I will differ on the flowers and just have more of those in the main part anyways. So yeah, we are going to start segregating from the reference a little bit, pulling away, doing our own thing. Oh god. Over here as well, well, we will work with it, we'll work with it. I'm going to go on that moon layer and add another moon in the background there, grabbing the background color, I think, just so that it sort of blends in with the background a little bit more. And this side, all of the moons sort of show in the same direction. I'll go on a layer below to add the moon in the background here, also in the same dark color, and I'll add another one in a lighter color over here, also sort of further away, which we will sort of show by the flowers with the hard shading brush or the hard airbrush. Grab that background color that is closest to your lower ground part and add a little bit of that over the edge here. Oh, make sure you're in the right layer for that, on the background layer. Bit of an important point. And I'm also going to add in some of that darker blue again from the top part. And using the smudge tool with the same brush, I'm just going to go in and smooch all this out a little bit. Something like that. That'll do. So there is water all around this, I think, and in that case, on this same layer with the smudge tool, I'm just going to smooth out the edges here. And on the flower layer with the Inca brush or the define coloring brush, the syrup brush or the define coloring brush, grab the main color that you've got around the flowers, go a bit lighter and only slightly lighter in the here as well, and then I'm going to add some more flowers here, just sort of dotting them around the other flowers, creating a bit more of an ombre or a transition either direction. I'm also going to add some into the mix in that color. You probably don't want to come out quite as far as I have down here. I'm just going to take some away here a little bit. And then I'm going to go lighter and more into direction of turquoise. Actually, I think I'll go lighter, but I'll stay in that cooler hue and just add some more flowers in this tone. And I'll add some darker ones around these areas here too. What is going on? There we go. I think my tip was just a little bit unscrewed. And I'll add these into the background part here too, because they are bright enough to sort of be the next color in this transition. And then I'll go darker and more towards the next darker hue in blue and add those in the distance. Nice. Okay, I think we can go ahead and just focus on this here for a second, just to bring the whole thing a little bit more together where we are. So I think probably this is going to be the colors I'm going to go for. So let's start on the outside ring. Let's create a new layer above that and select clipping layer mask when you open the menu. With the define coloring brush or the syrup brush, grab your main color and go lighter and more towards the turquoise. And for this one, I want to add this sort of spiral first, so it's sort of the edge or a ridge basically, on which the flatter part is going to be visible or sitting on. And I'll also add this lighter color to the edge of this part on the edge. Because this isn't entirely the right form, I will just go to the base, and with the base color I want to make this part here a bit thicker and also slightly, or as round as possible anyways. And then on this edge as well, I'll go a bit thicker towards the ground. When you draw a shape and you hold down longer, if you've got that enabled in your settings, you will get an automatic shape, which can be quite helpful with getting the actual sides round, if this here works with me. And you can just sort of move it, you can press edit and move that around until it fits. I will duplicate that layer again just to make everything a bit more seamless. And then, oh, I see I've also drawn over this area quite a bit, or rather I do want to make that a bit more smooth. So with the automatic tool, I'm just going to create that smoother line again. Okay, now back to the actual clipping layer mask. We've added our brighter areas here, and with the same brushes I want to go and add the darker part to this, which is in a more dark hue and slightly more gray, I would say, also definitely darker, something like that. Just adding that in next to it. And then we've got the reflections from the inside, I believe, that are lighting that up a bit. So with a lighter color blue that is also towards the turquoise more, but also sort of in the middle here, not quite vibrant, but a little bit gray. And also another one in that slightly darker tone here. Then on this side, we've got very basically a bit of a purple, a light purple, something like this. And I'm gonna go slightly more into that, well, towards this sort of hue and slightly darker. Again, darker just to add a bit more of that color in the blue here. And towards the ground, we have got a bit of a lighter turquoisey, even lighter shade of blue that is sort of part of that ridge here. Okay, then the other side has got a very obvious light. I'm going to go into the more turquoise part for this bright area here. There's a moon that's sitting on it, I think, or just behind it as well. And if I'm not mistaken, there are two ridges coming out. Where are the other references? Well, I guess we can only really see this main thing here and then that sort of structure on it. So I'm going to add this ridge here first. One lighter one is following inside, one is staying in this sort of middle part. Where is the other reference again? Hello. And up here it's going a bit more dark. Something like this. Actually, that is basically the base color. I want to go darker than that and add that into this area here. And this can also go into the other side a bit more, like that. It's also on the other side, although slightly darker in the hue, reflecting the outside around it a bit more, I believe. Okay, so that is sort of the beginnings of this. I will grab the define coloring brush in the smudge tool, and if you are using the syrup, then go ahead with that one. And in this case, we want to just gently sort of smudge these together, trying to make sure that the separation between the dark and the light on the ridge next to each other stays intact. So mainly this side here, where the contrast is really quite sharp. I want to keep that relatively well defined. So I'm just going to go gently with that smudge tool in this area and focus more on getting the colors on this side united. And actually, I think I've painted the base in too far. So I'm just going to erase the base down here a bit more. And I'll grab that main moon in the middle with the selection tool on its layer. And with the uniform, I'm just going to pull that down a bit. So it's actually sitting on the ground. I'll also make it slightly smaller, I think, actually. So when you select that, just go in with the uniform and make that a bit smaller here. On the other side, we want to go in with the smudge tool as well. So I'm just going to smudge out this direction here, trying to keep that ridge intact again. And then I'm going to blend the other colors on the other side. Once I've selected the base layer, I want to go in and just color tap the lightest color you've got here. I want to add this sort of spike here, and also I want to erase just a tiny bit of this edge here, although there is one in the actual reference as well. And in the clipping mask layer with the darker color here, I want to make sure that darker color goes up so that this edge here is more defined. And we definitely need to select a lighter color for that. I'm going to go more into the darker blue here and then more into the lighter area, even lighter, and add that in on the edge here. And then this can also be smudged in gently. In the background, I'd also, well, I might actually add that on a separate layer, to be honest, that moon. So I'll create a new layer underneath this outside circle, and with the same brush as always, I will go ahead and grab a darker color from the outside ring and basically add in my moon here, sitting in the middle, surrounded by 2 spikes, I think. And also in... Hi guys, so this was how I ended last night. I did have to stop because it was too late, but now it is first thing in the morning and I'm ready to dive back in. I will continue with the shading of this structure over here, the big moon basically, and I don't actually know what I was saying last night, but I think this is looking pretty good. I would even say let's merge together this clipping layer mask with the first bit of detail onto that structure. So merge down, and then we've tidied up that part a little bit more. I think I want to do these rocks next, funnily enough, because they look bare and they're sort of in the way a bit. So I'll create a new clipping layer mask to these. I'll also duplicate and merge them together, because with the, you know, defined coloring brush, this is all a little bit different. So if you were using the syrup brush, then I'd recommend continuing with that. On this new layer, I want to grab the main color I have here and then basically go a lot lighter and just see what happens. I mean, this is a pretty good shade, to be honest. We've got a bit of a section here and a slight separation between these two. And then we've got the surface of this rock over here, and all of that is sort of followed by a blue that is darker and underneath. So I'm just gonna add one that is slightly, actually that's kind of too dark, but I do want to go more blue. Actually, that's not too dark, we do need to go darker. So yeah, just adding that blue in the edge here. I'm trying to leave that far away edge there free, and then on the other side I'm also going to I'm gonna add the dark blue color here and sort of follow the shape of this rock by leaving some streaks in the color from before. And I'll use the define coloring brush in the smudge tool, in your case perhaps the syrup brush, to just smudge that together a bit, but to make sure that these are still visible a little bit. And the same thing on the top. Even just tapping into this structure will give the edge a bit of a different texture, a bit of a different shape. And then the same thing sort of here. We can tap out a bit more on this edge, so it looks a bit rounder. And below that I will just go ahead and smudge these lines out a bit, but make sure they're still sort of there. Also here in this sort of gap here, we can go in a little bit with the smudge tool. I don't know if you can see that, but it looks already this way as if it was sort of going down here, and we didn't have to add any more colors, which is quite nice. Oops. Okay, so that's like the primary part really. I'm also going to add a bit to that rock down there with the main brighter color that we had by color picking that, and then grabbing a slightly darker color for the other side, and also going in with the smudge tool here. Something like that is already looking a lot better. I think we could actually get away with adding a slightly lighter color in here as well. It does feel like there needs to be a little bit more highlight in here. On the other side might as well get some too, so I'm just gonna add some lighter color here into this part that is raising up most. Now that looks better. Okay, now I'm gonna merge that clipping mask layer down on the rocks layer, and to make a bit more progress, let's go into the moon part. So on the moon layer here, we've got the big one and then a couple of smaller ones. I want to create another new layer on top of that, make that a clipping layer mask, and we can go ahead and basically stick with the same brushes again. We're going to do some smudging again here. So if you want to grab the main color of this and then go a lot lighter towards white, I'm going to go a little bit more towards the turquoise, but not that much, mostly because that's a really bright highlight. And once I've added that into the main part, I will then go ahead and add a slightly more blue purplish lighter color. This doesn't look like much right now because our base is quite bright, but I'm really happy with the immediate color choice I got here. And to make sure that it does stick out, I will grab a darker blue purple. We can go quite dark here, funnily enough, so I'm going to go a bit more towards purple. Dark, but also keep it a bit more desaturated, I think. That looks about right. And just adding like a smidgen around the edge, which we can then sort of smudge in with the background color and the edges we got here. Another thing is we have got a light purple that is something like this. I'm going to go a bit more towards blue because the purple actually doesn't stand out that much here. Might have to go even more blue, like that maybe. Actually, we want to go a bit more towards this. Okay, this one feels harder to pinpoint. I think this is a good color. It's just sort of a bluish tone that I can use for my shadows here. And I'll connect that to the sides here, but I will leave the bottom part basically dark in this way that it has been, and I'll add a bit of a lighter edge to the bottom and the side. And then at the top we do have a little bit more dark blue. Oops, not quite that dark, but something like this I think does it. And if you want to just go ahead and erase a little bit of that edge between so we get a bit of that blue back in here, then there we go. I will grab the smudging tool now. The fine coloring brush is always at the moment, syrup brush if you have the alternative. And you just want to go in and smudge this, sort of following the directions of the ball colors on here. So you can see perhaps the smudging direction is going up, and then it sort of curves around and then it goes up here. So we're just trying to imitate that. And down here we can sort of go like this, like more into that direction, up and down, making sure that the main position of these colors sort of stays intact. We don't want to smudge them like all across, but we just want to make sure that the edges and the colors stay sort of where they are. So I'm just going to go in really carefully. And if you look into the reference, you can see that there isn't too much darkness on the side visible where I am now. So I will just go ahead and pull out that white part here on the edge a bit more, and also pull in a bit more of that lighter color to the edge. And then at the top we have that darker section. Just gonna go ahead and smudge out this line that I added in, and also these areas here in color. And over here we have got quite a dark reflection on this edge, so that's great. I do want to make sure this is intact. So I'm just going to gently pull that out in all directions. And let's add some light white in here too. This white is actually a lot more purple than I thought in the reference, so I'm just pulling in the purple and then smudging that together a bit more, as you can see. Okay, and I think the sharper edge is okay on this side. Might just want to smudge out this smudge part, and obviously we have a lot more colors that we could add here, but what we'll make up for with this is we'll use the blending mode layers in a bit to add color and light, and that will really transform this, believe me. That is how I go about it anyways, usually. Okay, let's add the background one to the edge there. Oops, this one's also really bright for some reason. Just gonna smudge that towards the edge a bit more. And then for that background part here, I'm gonna create a new clipping mask layer to that as well. And this one is fading more into the background, so it's got more of a darker blue purple thing on it here, mainly. And I'm gonna smudge that out straight away just to see if we need to add transitioning colors, because the mix of these two colors is already quite good. Okay, yeah, we do need to add transitioning colors. So I'm going to color pick the main color I have here, go slightly more towards marine, and then grab a light color up here. Yeah, that looks about right. And I'll follow that up with another color that's slightly lighter in terms of hue, like that. And with the erasing tool and the fine coloring brush or the Inca brush, set that to a low opacity brush, something like 20%, and then just go into the middle and take away from the middle a little bit. That will smudge out a bit more, but I just want to get a bit of that shadow in immediately. Although it looks like going back to the main brush, we do need to add a bit more shadow into this area here with a purple. Something like that. Okay, time to smudge this out. Again, trying to keep the lines intact. So just gently pulling them in whatever direction. Oh no. Okay, and then on the edge here as well. And that seems to be blurry enough for me, I think. That's okay, although I want to refine the shape just a little bit more. So I'm going back into the main layer of this and just taking away, oops, make sure your brush in eraser is at full opacity again. And then just erase whatever you feel like, if you have the same problem. With the shape being a little bit wabi-sabi. Okay, now that is enough, I think. And obviously we have the moon in the middle there, which is on what layer? It looks like that's on, I don't know where that is. Okay, let's just quickly merge the layers together. So this one is the clipping mask layer to that, happy with that, and this one is with this. Oh, there it is. This is the moon in the middle there, and I'm going to duplicate that real quick. With this one, actually, we've got a bit more of these light purples, so I'm going to grab that shade from the back, go a bit darker and a bit more purple, and this here will be my shade for the actual moon here. I am painting this in on the same layer where I added it, not on a clipping layer mask, mostly because I think I need to correct the shape as well, so I might as well be on this layer and just enhance that a bit better, make that a bit better. And then on either side, I think there are two, they are like little rocks. So I've got one over here and there, and then also it looks like there's another one over there. And for that I will create a new clipping mask layer, and here I'm going to add that light in from the big pearl, from the big moon, and I'm just going to add that in on the edges. Unfortunately this symbol is in the middle, so I can't actually see it on this reference, but maybe, oh, maybe we'll see it on one of the other ones. yeah, so the inside is lighter. We can make that a bit broader as well, I guess. Well, actually, no. I'm going to make the shape a bit broader itself instead of going down even more. Something like that. And then on this side, how funny, I think I ended up going with the wrong colors for the main thing anyways. This year it's got more blue in it, so I'm going to add a little bit of a lighter blue and smudge that into the edges here. Smudge out on the clipping layer mask these guys, this white part. Oh, and also I do want to refine this with the eraser for a second, these parts, and then go in on the clipping mask layer and smudge out that whiter highlight part. Nice, enough for that one. I'll merge the clipping mask layer down and let's have a quick look. I mean, we could add our blending mode layers already and then take a big chunk of work away, so let's do that first. On the top, I think we can go ahead and create an add layer. I'm just wondering about the placement of this layer because I feel like, yeah, anyways, let's just stay on top for a minute and have a look. So with the hard shading brush or the hard airbrush, in itself, obviously the flowers are lit up, but I don't know how I'm gonna do that quite yet. But with the main part, we have our light obviously on the moon structure here, and it's quite blue, so I'm gonna go quite saturated blue here, and then just add that with this round brush. Add this lighter part into this, whoops, into this area. Might go even whiter and a bit more purple and see what happens. No, so the light is definitely more blue. There's a bunch of light around here, obviously, and I will add some on the flowers, I think. Okay, let's just get our sketch in and have a quick look. There are a few elements missing which will brighten up the rest of the space as well. So I will go into the back here and create a new layer on top of the background, and with this hard shading brush, actually let's go with the oil paint brush from Procreate and grab that lighter blue that is part of the highlight here, and let's create the walls that are coming up on either side. These are going to be nice and structured in their texture, sort of like the oil brush. So I'm just going to go with this. And also with the hard shading brush in the eraser, I will go in and basically take a little bit away just from these middle parts here that will sort of fade into the background a bit more. And from this here, from this structure, just so they fade back. And once that's done, I want to go onto the top over the add layer and create and add our vines. For this one, we might as well go ahead and add these with the chalk brush. No, actually, let's go ahead and use the syrup / the define coloring brush, whatever you've got going. I will grab a lighter purple for these vines and add those in on this new layer. Sort of going in by adding these sort of thicker brush strokes. I don't even know how to describe this, but sort of just adding leaves by tapping the brush a bit more while I go down. And I will add some on the other side in this color too, but then I want to go and add some in a darker color. So let's go into this more saturated, desaturated darker one. I think there's quite a big thing over here on the side as well in terms of the foliage. So I might go ahead and just add that in a bit more blue, a bit more of a darker blue, and just start with this one and maybe even fade out even more. I'll go a bit darker for the top part so it fades away a little bit more. And I'll add a little bit more of this darker color around as well. And here I'll go slightly lighter so you can see this. Oh, we might have to go darker actually. So we can see this against the background here. And then into this one, I want to add a second color. So going slightly darker, for example, here, just adding in some more petals in this darker color and basically giving them a bit more of a feel, 3D feel to them. Okay. Generally speaking, I think I don't want to have the ad layer be so intense on these flowers. I think that's the general idea for sure, but in this case, I don't really want that. So I'm going to take that away and delete that. Going onto that moon layer that we've got here, I want to create a new layer above that and create an ad layer first. With the hard shading brush or the hard airbrush, I want to add a bit more of a turquoise feel to this. So I'm going to add that onto the top part here. And actually we can use something nicer from the other library. In the Procreate library we have a really nice one. I think we can use, wow, I don't actually remember which one it was. It's been so long since I've used these. How about we go for the pepperberry and just see if that one is right. Oh no. So basically one of these guys just adds a really nice texture, and I wanted to find that again, but I mean, this does it. It does give us a bit more texture. So this is the Mountain Lilac, and we can create a clipping layer mask to the actual structure here and see what difference this made. And then I want to create another layer on top of that as a clipping layer mask and make that an overlay layer. Now back to the regular library with the hard shading brush or the hard airbrush, I want to grab a dark blue and see if I can add in some of this shadow on the lower parts. This will also give you a lot more color intense parts, so depending what color you've chosen, that will intensify in that way. So I'm going a bit more turquoise on the top and a little bit more dark blue here, purple. And the other thing I want to do here for sure is add a lighter reflection on the lower part. So on this add layer with a light blue, for example, I just want to add in that light reflection from below. And actually I think I might make that more purple. Not that it's very visible, but it sort of highlights the moon here. So, well, I won't do it too much because it will take away, I think, from it more than not in my case. And then we've got the add layer still, so I'm going to add a bit more of an intense edge here in whatever color you choose. I'm still sticking with that purple, although I don't think it's making a major difference. Okay, definitely needs a bit more shadow on the left, and we've already added shadow, so I'm just going to copy paste that and make that an overlay layer, which basically darkens, intensifies the color below. I'm just going to move that up a bit so it's a bit higher, that shadow, and also I'll smudge that out with the hard shading brush slash the hard airbrush. And I do want to have a bit more of a dark purple really, so I'm going to go with the purple and add that hopefully in here. Don't actually know if it made any difference. And it did, and I don't think I like it too much. I'm just going to take away a little bit again. I think that's enough though. That's enough shading for this moon at the moment. The add layer is quite intense down here. Just going to take a little bit away. Something like that. Let's merge those down. Merging them down so we tidy them up. And while we're at it, I'll create a new clipping mask layer, but this will be a normal one, and with the defined coloring brush or the SERP, go ahead and let's add a bit more to this moon. First, I'll go back to the base of it and finish the shape. Make it a bit thicker and make sure that the edges are relatively even. I'll duplicate that layer as well, merge that down to make sure it's all nice and thick. And we've got some flowers come over it, but I think that's okay. And then on the actual clipping mask layer, I will go ahead and add a darker color inside. That's more blue, and I'll go more purple actually even, and just add that in here. As our first shadow, we've got a lighter one that's also more purple, I think, on the edge here. And the light, there is light on there as you can see, but it's mostly on the edge here, and then after that it sort of fades away. So I'll go darker and make sure that doesn't come across this part. And then actually once I've done that, I realized that the inside has got a lighter reflection as well. So I'll go in with a light blue and add that something like this. And then once that is done, hello, screenshot is slow. I'll go in with the smudging tool of the defined coloring brush and basically smudge these guys out. Actually, I do want to make sure this has got quite a nice sharp edge here, so I'm going to add a bit of this in, and let's merge that down. And what else have we got? We've got a few other moons around here, which I'm going to add color to quickly. So while I'm down on the main part here, I'm just going to erase the edges a bit, make sure that this moon is also a bit wider, a bit more refined, and and then I'll sort of go with the same way in the procedure. I'll duplicate this first and merge that together, then create a new clipping layer mask. And to this, I want to add a slight reflection in this part. And I want to go slightly darker on the outside, like that. And then I want to add a lighter reflection in this part as well, and that's pretty much it. Go ahead and just smudge that out again. Something like that I think is enough. And then where is the next moon? That's also on this area, so I'm also gonna do the same thing. Go in and fix the shape on the main base. And then once that is done, I will go into a new layer. Oh, we'll duplicate that as well. Create a clipping layer mask and repeat the same thing, basically giving this an inside that is slightly lighter for reflection purposes, an edge to the outside that is slightly darker, that is highlighting the rim basically. In this case, to be honest, we could probably make this a bit thicker as well. And so in this case, on the clipping layer mask, I want to add a second color that's slightly darker and perhaps a bit more dark blue, something like that. And I'll go back in and just smudge that together a bit. Pretty straightforward. Let's add a nice lighter color on here as well, actually. Something like just up there. And also on this tip here. Okay, that is also good. I'll merge that down, and we have got another moon, but I think that's on the other layer, so I'll go down onto the layer where it is, fix the shape real quick. And then we'll create a clipping layer mask and add the colors again. Clipping layer mask, and then go ahead and add a lighter color inside. And I'll add one on the edge on the rim as well, and then I'll go darker for that first shadow on the outside, and I'll go and add a lighter color on the top and the edge here, and then we just want to smudge that out. Whoa. And that is, to be honest, that is good enough for me here. So I'll merge that down. There is one in the distance here. Might as well just give this one without a clipping layer mask, like a lighter edge. So I'll just color pick that and go a bit brighter. And then with the main color, I'll just give this a bit more of a base. Oh, I knew I had the wrong brush in the bleeding eraser. Okay, that definitely made my life a little bit harder, but that's okay. Not too bad. Okay, so I think all the elements are kind of in there now, and I want to sort of go ahead and just merge the two moon layers together so they're all together. And then I want to go onto the main part here on the spiral, create a new layer to that, make that a clipping layer mask, and let us go ahead and make that an overlay layer. Or should we add an add layer first? Add layer first. So with the hard shading brush or the hard airbrush, go in and add a light purple, mainly on the edge here. And Okay, so now that that's done, I do want to add a slight bit of light in here, so just a bit of that reflection of that moon in here in the middle. And okay, that's pretty much good. I will grab a new layer on top, make that a clipping layer mask, and set that to overlay, and this is where our actual colors come in most, or rather our shadow and light a bit more. So I'm going to go darker blue, purple for a second here and add that into the spiral. Oh dear, I think we might have to actually go ahead and we might have to make that in a multiply layer mask. So if you want to set that on multiply and grab a lighter purple that's dark and add that to the top for a second, just for the darkness. It's obviously a bit too dark. Let's go ahead and smudge it out straight away, so we are sort of working with it as we go. And that is obviously too dark, but for now that's going to be a bit of our shadow, and we can set the layer opacity lower in a second. And I'll come in from the outside as well and add that darkness in. And then there's some darkness in this area here. I'm going to make my brush a bit smaller and add that in to the edge here again. There's also this sort of spiral pattern on the edge. And then there's some harsher shadow just behind this ridge. Let's go ahead and just smudge these out gently so the actual shape remains a bit smoother. So this is obviously dark, and we've got our add layer that I'm going to go into now, and with the smudging tool basically smudge your light out a bit. And I think that's all right, that's pretty good. Obviously the colors are slightly different, so let us dive into that by merging those down. Although the multiply layer, yeah, let's merge that down too. And then overall I want to go in and basically go into the adjustments, and I want to add a bit more purple to it. So I'm going to try by going a bit, 3% is all it took, and that's quite a big difference already. That's a lot more purple, and I think I'll go slightly desaturated, which I definitely prefer. I definitely think that's a bit more accurate. So yeah, desaturated by 5% and increase the hue by 3. I'll apply that and then go out of that. And I'll do something similar for the main moon. But this one, because that's on the layer now with all the other moons, I do want to make sure that it's only this one I'm working on. So I'll separate that out with the lasso tool and then go into the adjustments part. So before that we did about 3% on the hue. Whoops. And wow, I couldn't resist. Okay, so 3% on the hue or something like that, and then decrease the saturation by 5. Definitely better. I'm going to try one more percent. I think that's really purple. I don't think I'm going to go that far. Just 2% and 3% less saturated. Okay, and now we've got a better base to go on, I think, personally. And we can add a bit of fog. So above your moon layer here, I want to create a new normal layer, and with the hard shading brush or the hard airbrush, I'd recommend going in and adding a light purple, white as a fog. And because this is not on any specific like blending mode layer, we can just paint over the rest of the objects around and make it look more like fog instead of anything else. I go a bit more blue and also darker, I think, and just see what happens. Okay, so that I'm not mad at that, but I do want to smudge that out a bit more. So with the hard shading brush in the smudge tool or the hard airbrush, just go in and pull out the top part a bit to make that a bit smoother. Our moons are going a bit more in the distance, which I don't think is a bad thing, really. I think that's quite nice because seeing them less also puts them more into the distance, really. And yeah, I'm quite happy with this. And now I want to focus on getting some light into these flowers and getting in some water. So for the flowers themselves, I think if we go on a new layer and we have the define coloring brush or the syrup option, the flowers themselves in all of this obviously are lit, but more than that, they also have a lot of detail, which is going to be a little bit harder for us. But I think I might go ahead and basically create an add layer because it's going to be really strong. I want to go darker. It's still going to be much brighter, and we will have to just see if we want to set our brush on a lower opacity. I'm just going to try that out. I think it would make sense to go with a lower brush opacity. So if you want to go for that, I've got like a 50% opacity here. With your syrup brush, you might have to go even lower because the syrup brush is a bit harder. And then basically go in and add some flower petals that are brighter on top. You can go into the spaces in between, but I would recommend not covering them up fully. And then just adding to this sea of flowers by adding these petal-like brush strokes and going through the whole thing again. I mean, you could just do a little space and then copy and paste that across the board, but I really like when it's done by hand, all of it, because you can just adjust it so much easier, and sometimes the easy shortcut is also the longer way, funny enough. Okay, so you can sort of see what I'm doing here, and it's not giving the individual flowers actual detail, but what it does do is just create a bit of that effect of the lit up flowers in some areas brighter and some areas slightly darker. So I hope that this does not disappoint. Anyways, let's just go ahead and do this. I think we might have to adjust the colors with the overlay layer in a bit on here anyways, because it's quite turquoise, and actually I think, well, we've been following 3 different references, so I might just have to adjust the colors overall. We shall see. And again, in the distance, we'll want to have smaller brush strokes, and in the front, we will want to have big ones or bigger ones. I'm gonna go a bit darker with this and sort of add these over here a bit more, sort of as a transition. I'll go even darker even than that and just add these in the transition or in darker areas, because I don't have the same color everywhere. I have left a couple of areas in between without any highlights yet, and I think that's pretty good. I'll probably keep those. Okay, so I've sort of added that across the board in the final color at the end there. And also what we need to do now is add a bit of the shape and shadow coloring to the ground. So with a new layer on top, that is sort of an overlay layer. It's not quite on top because the foliage is on the very top, but it doesn't. Actually, let's just pull the foliage below that. and then it is on the very top. And with the hard shading brush, we can go ahead and basically grab a darker purple. I think would be fine, something like this. I'm gonna go quite warm to see if that makes any difference in the purple we get. No, somehow the overlay layer isn't quite working as it usually does for me, which is kind of weird. Oh no, what on earth is going on? I honestly don't know what's going on. It did what it did before and now it's not, but let's see. We want to add some shadow, so we might as well go into the multiply layer in that case. We want to add some darker purple, that's more like it. And with this and the brush on a small size, I just want to make sure that the flowers themselves have got some shadow in them. So we've got like just adding some streaks of shadow into this flower ensemble will make this a bit better, I think, already. I mean, these are quite harsh lines, you can see them really well, really clearly, but we'll smudge those out a bit. For now, it's just sort of making sure we have got a focal point around. Coming in from the right side as well. So let's just see before and after. I'm going to smudge this out with the hard shading brush, and in your case perhaps the hard airbrush, and just make sure that it isn't quite so harsh, and I think that will improve that a lot. The main thing is we do want to have a bit of structure in these flowers, I think, personally. I mean, if you don't want to, then just leave that. Yeah, and I like that, although I will take away what I put onto this area here, because it's coming into the front and I want that to be nice and bright, and perhaps even just the flowers right there by the moon. I feel like this is really harsh. From below, that's just really dark. So let's create another layer on the bottom, or below the last layer. With the oil paint, go in and grab the color that is in between the flowers at the moment, and let's go a bit more purple and lighter, especially I feel like in that area over here. Maybe I need to go a bit more turquoise to sort of blend that in together, but I just want to make sure that this is a little bit less intense. That's a bit too much. And then obviously we're going into the darker part, so I'm just going to color pick that darker part and add that in to the edges here. I'm definitely happier with this. And then I'm going to add the edges to these flower parts here too a bit more, and go slightly darker but not too much darker first, and add that in here as well. We have got water around here, so depending on if you want to keep this texture, I think it's quite cool. I think I might leave that. You can keep it or you can smudge that out. And as you can see, we still got our nice background parts here that are really nice, sort of faded into the background. Let's create another layer on the top and make that an add layer with a really strong purple and the hard shading brush or the hard air brush. Go in and just add a bit of light to this middle section in the background, and also to the edges of the flowers. It's quite purple, so I want to go a bit more turquoise towards the center. Just adding that light in. For the actual water, really, they've just got a bit of a reflection going on, so with the oil paint, why not, we can just grab the lightest color of the flowers and basically add that to the edge here, all around. Grab a bit of that purple from that moon and add a bit of the reflection in here. And some of the other colors in the background there, I've just color picked that purple from the background. And with this, we can go ahead with the Define Coloring Brush or the Syrup Brush in the Smudge tool. And I might just duplicate that and see what I want to do. But on this layer, basically, we've got sort of like this kind of reflection going on. Perhaps the first thing we'll do is just smudge it out a bit more in this wavy shape by drawing down zigzag lines in this smudge tool. And making sure to pull up some of that darker part as well. But especially from the top, we want to add that dark back in. I mean, we'll probably add that in manually, but if you can pull some in, then go for it. Something like that. And the same thing on the edges here. We don't want to have the zigzag too tightly coiled, so I'm just going to go in and break that up slightly. That's obviously quite a lot of reflection, so I'm going to see if I want to erase a little bit in a second. Mainly, we have, well, I'm just going to pull that out with the hard shading brush in the smudge tool as well, actually, and smudge it so it looks less sharp on the edge below. And with the eraser, I want to go in and take some areas away a little bit more where I want to have a bit more of that shadow and less reflection. I think the first part of the reflection is looking pretty good here, and I want to also make sure that there is a bit of a darker edge before the reflection. So on a new layer with the hard shading brush or the hard airbrush, we can go in and grab the main color here, go and grab a darker one and basically add that to the edge. We probably should also define the color of the actual ground a bit more and make that a bit different from the water. So that is sort of the ground. I'm going to combine the two, the reflection, and I delete the duplicated reflection, by the way. I'm going to combine these two and pull them to the bottom of the picture. So we're not painting over any flowers and whatnot. And then going in with the smudging tool, the Define Coloring Brush, I just want to make sure that this part here, the darker edge, is a little bit more subtle. And smudged out slightly in some areas. And on a new layer on top of that, I'm just gonna grab this hard shading brush, or in your case perhaps the hard airbrush, and just grab a slightly more pink purple color for the base ground. I'm not sure about this entirely, to be truthful, but I'm just going to add that and see. I think particularly in the left it looks good. I'm just going to use the smudge tool and make that all a bit smoother, this pink tone, and perhaps in this case we should go ahead and set that on a blending mode layer for color. It's a bit more subtle. No, I think that's okay, to be honest. I'm just wondering if we should make the flowers go from a gradient of, you know, pink to turquoise a bit more. So I'm going to create a new layer on the top and just see if I can do that with an overlay layer and the pink tone and just see if I add that onto the edge here with the hard shading brush, will I make a difference in the flowers? Or do I need to be adding a more specific layer to the flowers? Obviously this is really intense, so I'm just going to go ahead and smudge that all out. I don't know at all. I don't think, as cute as it is, with all of that turquoise, I'm not sure. I gotta say, I think because we've added all the colors of the flowers in turquoise, it doesn't make much sense, because I've sort of got either a turquoise reference or a pink one, but mixing them together isn't so easy. I will just lower the opacity and go to the back and hide that pink part and see if just the overlay layer makes a bit of a difference. I think it does, and I think I prefer that, so that's good. I'll delete that background layer with the pink, and then for the background itself, to bring all of these reflections together and whatnot, I'll merge those together with the background, I think. Yeah, and then also the edge, and might as well merge the background pillars together. And then basically I want to create another overlay layer perhaps, and add in the darker parts of blue just to intensify this color down here, that is the water. And I'll add in a bit of this into the background to give some of that a bit of a stronger color. And that's pretty good. And then I think with the final add layer and some details to the water, we can really make that pop. So with the defined coloring brush, and let's grab a light blue for the reflection. If you want to go ahead and basically just add the basic reflection from flowers that are sitting above that and glowing into some of these areas, then I think we've already communicated quite well that this is water. Just sort of around as much as you want or as little as you want. And then with the defined coloring brush or the syrup brush in the smudging tool, I want to go out in and smudge these out basically. I'm going to stay zoomed out to make it a bit easier on me. I find it easy otherwise to get sort of lost in, you know, the details of these smudges. But we will notice either way if they don't look right from further away, and it will just be easier to follow the whole shape when it's all zoomed out a bit. Okay, so this is sort of the final part for the water, I think. I definitely want to add some brighter highlights into the flowers and stuff, but that is pretty much that then. If you notice any sharp edges in the water that you don't like, just go ahead and smudge those out. Generally speaking, that's pretty good, although the background here with this sort of water reflection, I'm just going to go in with the smudge tool and make that a bit more smooth with the defined coloring brush, just by smudging these reflections out a little bit more. And this is also the layer where we have this darker edge on it now, so I will go in and just also give this darker edge a bit of a smoother edge basically. Something like that. And for the final sort of bits, we can create another add layer, and I want to add, first of all, with the grainy detail brush, I want to add some detail. If you don't have that, the studio pen will do fine. With a darker blue on this add layer, I just want to add a couple of like water ripple, what's it called, bubbles on the water surface. These could also be like loose petals and whatever, but basically I just want to add a bit more detail to this section that looks quite bare. Then with the Define coloring brush, I do want to add a lighter color onto these rocks. Now this is going to be really bright and I'm not sure if this is going to do what I want it to, but when we have the smudge tool we might be able to just soften this but give it a brighter edge still. In this case I think this works. It's quite bright, so if you do want to go in and just erase a little bit with the hard airbrush or whatever, then do that, but I think because it's so close to this moon, I think that's okay, and I'll give the other moon a bit of a highlight as well. We've got this part and also this moon. I'm going to give this a highlight a bit more, and then over here too. So this is sort of the final part where I just want to add a couple of final parts. And on this moon in the back as well. Nice, and then obviously we have a couple of like flowers around and I want to give those a bit of a highlight as well. So in those cases I'll grab a bit more of a darker purple. We're still on the add layer here, and I'll just add in a bit of this on top, the edges sort of thing. Not major, just a little bit. And over here as well, just on the edge. And then a final thing as well is a couple more flowers that are brighter, and I will add those just throughout the entire flower patch in some areas. I'm going to try and respect the flower shape a little bit more with this one because it will really stick out. Well, I'll create a couple of flower shapes anyways. They might not be quite accurate, but they'll do. Just on some of the edges and throughout. Luckily, as we go into the middle here, even though these are brighter, the actual flower shapes don't matter as much because we are getting smaller in flowers as we go back into the painting. Over here, these can be quite small. And one final thing that I want to do on a new add layer is add sparkles. In this case, I usually grab the light pen from the Procreate brushes and I'll just go with a turquoise, I think. I don't think you can actually see the difference too much this time. But yeah, basically I just want to go in and add a bunch of little fireflies, especially around the flowers, because they are our sort of main source of light. So just adding them into the flowers as another bit of a highlight and detail, and just above. And then at the top here, I'll go for a bit more purple, maybe a bit more pink purple type fireflies. I do want to bring the whole painting a little bit more together. I feel like because we've used both purples and turquoises, it does diverge a little bit, mainly I think because the flowers have gone very turquoise. So I think I will go onto the base, of these flowers. And I want to, or should we just go on top with a new color layer? Let's just go on top with a new color layer and see what we can do with the hard shading brush or the hard airbrush. And which purple, I think that purple does it quite well. And I'll just add a bit of this purple into this painting. I mean, when you're closer, it gets more turquoise in this actual game, but when you're further away, it goes more purple. So I will basically add more purple around the areas that are further away. That is the theory anyways. Definitely looks better. I'm going to add some into this moon as well. Yeah, I'm definitely happy with that, and I'll add a little bit into the water to make that sort of reflect this a bit more. And yeah, I think that is us. I think I'm pretty happy with the result. Obviously with this sort of format, with this landscape format, it is a little bit different and I didn't have a direct reference to use, but I think at the end of the day, it does convey what I like about this place. Tell me what you think and I'll blend it in because I don't think the camera is showing it correctly, and then I'll make the colors available to you below. Okay, so there are actually a few things that I do want to change real quick before we move on. First of all, in the background, on the actual reflection part, I want to create a new layer above the background, and with the hard shading brush or the hard airbrush, just go ahead and grab a darker blue, and I want to make these reflections more straight, basically. And also, I think I generally feel like I've got a bit too much in the water as reflections, so I think the detail has gone on top more. This is the water detail that I'm not very happy with anymore, and also I think this water detail is fine, but also I want to take away a little bit of this. So just going on that layer and basically erasing, but I'm not erasing fully, I'm leaving some there. Basically just the shadow and the hint of some of these will be plenty, I think, because it's such a detailed piece. Just with this darker reflection below, I feel so much happier about the whole thing. And because we probably should make the whole thing a little bit more, well, like add a bit of a an artistic edge to it or something. It feels like it's sort of drifting off into nothing here. And so I want to grab a new layer on the top and add a couple of flowers in from the edge here, basically as if there was more flowers on the place that we're standing on. To look at this beautiful place. So definitely going more into the flower shape here with that triangle top. And in the eraser, I'm just going to find some of these shapes. I'll go a bit darker and more blue and add that in between as a bit of an extra color here. And then grab that lighter one again and just add a bit more in the edge here. And generally speaking, I feel like we could go even more. So I'm going to add some darker flowers, I think, on top and see if I can get that sort of silhouette going with these. Just color picking the darkest color around. And then adding some in between. Not sure, to be honest, not sure at all, but it's better than it was, to be honest. So I'm not too mad at that, although probably want to grab a slightly lighter color than that really dark one. Something that's going to stand out regardless. So still dark, but not quite that dark. Yeah, I don't know. I think we might have to add a bit of a backdrop that's also slightly darker. So I'm just going to create a new layer below that and make that, grab that dark color from the ground here and just add that on top gently with the hard airbrush. Definitely have to go lighter than this, so I'll go a bit more into the indigo direction. And that is also quite intense, so I'm just going to erase a little bit from here and here. I kind of liked it when these were darker, these flowers. So on the flower layer, I'm just going to use the lasso tool to basically go in and grab these darker flowers, and then we can easily adjust these in the adjustment section and make those darker again. I think even that is fine, so I'm just going to go with that. And then the next part here is I do want to have this flower part come out more, so I will go ahead with the define coloring brush, whoops, and I will basically add in the lighter flowers so that they sort of spill over onto the next area here. And these are a little bit darker, and I'm definitely not respecting the flower shape very well with these brush strokes because I'm going to go a bit faster now just to make up for the time. And basically I just want to make these flowers come over so that the whole composition looks a little bit more natural, a little bit nicer. So I've got something like this now, and then with a lighter color I will grab some more flowers and pop them into the midst here. Going in with a slightly more purple one again, just to go over the areas that feel a little bit too turquoise in the edge here. And also separating this out a little bit more, this sort of island here. Nice, so that feels a lot better. I feel like I can breathe freely again. I'm gonna go and add a bit of that darker color here, whoops, with the hard shading brush in the reflection area. And basically we sort of want to pull that layer up on top with all the fireflies, and I'll add a bunch more into this section as well. Okay, in all honesty, I don't know about this part in the front here. I know I've added it now, but I'm just gonna take it away again, I think. I'll make it a bit smaller. Oops, all those with the fireflies. So going back on the normal layer, I'll grab this, I'll make it a bit smaller. I'll set it on the edge here in smaller, and I'll definitely want to draw over those darker parts, oops, that I added. So with the Define Coloring brush and a turquoise, I'm just going to go in and add some more flowers on the edge here as well. So we've sort of got a straight and narrow river leading us to the moon now, which also feels like a bit of a path, and I'm definitely compositionally much happier with that. Let me know what you think, if you think this was a good improvement or not. And I'm also going to add some of these more, by the way, a little bit more of these flowers. Definitely happier than I was, absolutely. Sometimes I sit there after I finish the video tutorial and I like think on whether or not I should go back and film another 10 minutes just to really make this better and then actually feel good about the painting. So yeah, that's what I decided to do today. Over here I just want to go even darker with these flowers. And I'll also take the Define Coloring brush and erase some parts here. And on the add layer on top of that, I'm going to grab the same brush and go in with sort of, well, a darker purple to sort of add a bit of an edge to this as well. An extra bit of lighter flower part. Although in this case, it's not pink enough for some reason. So I'm just going to adjust that and make it fit a bit better. And then with the light pen, I'll go in and add some pinker fireflies. Just like that. And I think that is it now. For real, for real. Anyways, thanks for watching and have a great day.